S.O.A.P.
Welcome everyone to another episode of the S.O.A.P. My name is Daniel, and this episode I am joined by Aaron.
Hello.
And Delphine.
Hi.
Now, this episode we are talking about a little-known game called Final Fantasy, in particular Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy VIII. Now, a lot of news coming with both these games in the future, so Aaron, tell us what it is.
Well, Final Fantasy VII, it is one of the best-selling games ever released. It is probably the first role-playing game a lot of people around our age ever played, and was very, very instrumental in the success of the Sony PlayStation way back when, the original one. Released shortly after the release of the PlayStation, Final Fantasy VII was just something that most people had never seen before, with its open-world graphics, magic, this cyberpunk feel, and just an amazing storyline which drew you in from the first second. It was released by Square, not Square Enix as we know them today. They were only Squaresoft back in the day, and was out in 1997. It is responsible for the memes and the tropes of the spiky-haired anime guy becoming so popular over here, but was really, really instrumental in bringing Japanese role-playing to the West, and the reason that we have a lot of these great games like Kingdom Hearts, Final Fantasy, obviously, Dragon's Dogma, and a lot of other ones as well. So, basically, crazy cyberpunk story. The world has gone to hell in a handbasket, of course, and you, as an ex-soldier of the bad guys, or the guys that are running the planet, the Shinra Corporation, decide to shack up with some eco-terrorists and do some eco-terrorism to try and get the world back on track, because in this world, the world is powered by what is called the life force, or this green glowing energy which is mined from the ground, basically, and that powers everything. However, Cloud, that's your character, hooks up with the guys called Avalanche, including Barrett, Tifa, and an assorted lot of other people there, and they go on a big quest, and it spanned, at the time, 3 CD-ROMs, I think it was, and it was huge. It had over 80 hours of gameplay that you could get through, but I don't believe you've played it really, Dan, have you?
Played a little bit. But when you say, like, I haven't played it, I have played it, the game's so big that I played 40, 50 plus hours easy of that game, and definitely didn't get all the way through it. And it wasn't so much that it was a bad game. I played it well after release. I'm talking like 10 years plus for it. So I am very excited by what they're talking about with this new one. But Delphine, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about what they're doing now with Final Fantasy VII. What's this new version?
Sure, so they are doing a complete remake of Final Fantasy VII. So in terms of the story and the characters, we will find most of that back in the new version. However, they are going to adapt the story and, of course, the graphics to new technology and, you know, our new world. So that's looking really, really interesting for a lot of people who may have played the game before, but also for those people that have not played it. I think it's going to be a very, very exciting game to be playing. We expect for that game to be released in 2020, hopefully in the beginning of March. Now, it's been a long time coming for this particular remake. It was originally the work started in 2014, and some of the previous footage that we saw all the way back in 2015 was very, very different to what we've seen at E3 2019, where they had a playable version and a lot more information about the particular game that they're going to release.
With this, maybe I might throw this one back over to Aaron. We mentioned the release date, March 3rd, 2020. Square Enix, do we really know them for meeting deadlines?
No, absolutely not. Square Enix are terrible at deadlines. Just look at the recent deadline crush that happened with Kingdom Hearts 3 that was only, well, let's be honest, it was 10 to 15 years late, if I'm going to be honest with everyone.
I'm thinking more like Final Fantasy 15, the game that probably isn't really finished to this day, years after release.
Yeah. But look, Square Enix did tease this all the way back in 2014, and the fangirl for Final Fantasy 7 that I am got super excited with the new vision. So they were like, let's take the most, and they called it the most beloved role-playing game of all time, and I believe that. They took it and they updated the graphics to make it open world. So that was one of the big differences, is where the original Final Fantasy 7 was open world in a sort of non-open world way. The backgrounds were pre-rendered and you had many paths that you could go down on each screen. And the overworld, once you got out of Midgar, which is the city you start in, it was open world. However, when you're in the city or when you were doing a particular part of the quest line, it was usually fairly straight through and the backgrounds were pre-rendered. Now, Square showed us a fully open world version of Final Fantasy VII with Cloud and Barrett pushing through a crowd of people, sort of like, Grand Theft Auto style, so looking from behind and actually having everything. And they teased that everything was going to be open and you could do so much more with the game rather than just following a set sort of pre-rendered backgrounds and such. And we lived fat on that trailer for quite a while, and Dan will back me up, and he still niggles me about it this day because I don't own a PlayStation 4. And the reason for that is I was waiting for the Final Fantasy VII Special Edition to come out, so I was going to buy that. And the years went on, and now we find ourselves halfway through 2019. I still don't have a PS4, nor do I have Final Fantasy VII, but they kept us going with little bits and pieces here and there coming through, and sort of photos and a trailer and a leak here and there. But we then of course last year knew that nothing was going to happen because of the Kingdom Hearts 3 crush, that they basically took everyone from every other project and shoved them in a room until Kingdom Hearts 3 was done, which is fine. Kingdom Hearts 3 is a great game. I haven't got to play it yet because I don't have a PlayStation, obviously. But so we finally got word that we were going to get the trailer, we are going to get the demo at E3 this year, and it was met with a hefty grain of salt. Let's just put it that way, because a lot of people were like, well, they're not going to. It's a tease. But in true Square Enix style, they actually really did come out and wow everyone. And the funniest thing was they didn't actually release the trailer that we got this year, which is mind-blowing, by the way, mind you. They didn't release that at E3. There's a concert series called Distant Worlds that's put on in conjunction with Square Enix, which is basically an orchestra that goes around and plays all of the music from the cutscenes and the various games, while projections of cutscenes of the games and stuff goes on a big screen. And it's amazing. It comes to Australia every once in a while, and I really want to go and see it because the music is one of the big things, and Delphine's played a lot of Final Fantasy. She'll agree with me that the music in those games really does make the tension or the immersion so much better. But Distant Worlds, it came, and it was with the same city as E3. Where was E3 this year? I can't remember. I'm so sorry. But it was in the same city as where E3 was. So they did their thing, and at the end, they basically dropped the trailer and went, hey, here you go, Final Fantasy. And then they dropped the date and dropped the mic. And that was pretty much it. So they won E3 without even going, although they did back that performance up with a playable demo at E3. And from all reports, it's going to be awesome. Now, they have changed the battle system, which has left a sort of sour taste in a lot of people's mouths. And I might bring Delphine into this conversation because she's played Final Fantasy VII quite a lot. And when I say battle system, I mean it's a role-playing game, so you don't run and hack and slash like you would in something like Dark Souls or something like that. You would go into an encounter and then you sort of face off. Your team on one side of the screen and the enemy on the other, and then you get to choose spells or certain attacks, or you can you can use spells or certain attacks, or you can wait, or you can summon dirty great big monsters to your side and fight. And while you went on with that, it actually paused the game, so it gave you time to think. However, as we get to Final Fantasy 13, 15, Final Fantasy Online, they've gone more towards an active battle system, so an active time battle where you basically have to choose what's going on in real time. And that gave a lot of people the shits, because a big thing about Final Fantasy VII is you could sit back and you could go, no, well, he's weak against lightning, I'm going to cast lightning, and then I'm going to have this effect happen, and then my next player is going to do this. It ties into the materia system as well. Maybe, Delphine, you want to go a little bit deeper into the battle systems here, because I'm sure everyone's sick of hearing my voice at this point.
Sure. Look, I love the Final Fantasy VII battle system. That turn-based system is what I loved most out of all the Final Fantasy games, and having played Final Fantasy 15 and 8, 9 and 10 and 10 too, but 15 recently, where that changed a lot. I have to say it's a system that I like a lot less. If you know a little bit about me, I love the time management games, so for me the turn-based, a little bit more tactical, is what I really love. What's really interesting with Final Fantasy VII Remake is that they have really combined the ATB system, like Final Fantasy 15, with tactical mode, which allows you to slow down time and take a little bit more time to actually choose what actions you're going to be doing. That for me was the most exciting thing out of the demo that they presented at E3, because it really made me feel like this was much more in line with what I remember in terms of combat mode from Final Fantasy VII. So I'm pretty excited about that. Of course, they're also going to work with the materia, which is another very, very important part of Final Fantasy VII. And that allows you to pretty much equip different types of magic. Of course, like any RPG, you will be collecting different kinds of weapons and developing your powers over time, as well as your equipment. Now, with the materia, there is some extra customization as well in regards to which kinds of magic you want to equip, which might provide more or less power against certain enemies and so on. So there was a lot of that in Final Fantasy VII. What I'm, of course, really wondering with all of that and how that's going to come into this game is how that's going to play into an episodic game. Because I can't imagine that we're going to be playing 20, 30, 40, 50, 70 hours of this game without getting all the way to the maximum materia and equipment and so on that you could get. So what does that mean for the future as well?
Well, that's a good question, and Square haven't answered that yet, because the first release of the Final Fantasy VII Remake is episodic, as you said, and it's only going to go to basically the end of Disc 1 on the classic PlayStation, which is where you finally leave Midgar, which is that cool, epic city that you see in all of the Final Fantasy stuff, and finally get to the overworld, where you actually meet more companions, and the story really kicks up a notch and goes batshit crazy. Square is saying that each episode is going to be its own game, and if you've ever played a Final Fantasy or Kingdom Hearts game, each of those games can be upwards of 60 to 80 hours. So this could be a fair chunk of your life if it does go through three episodes and follows the original, because it was quite funny where the original Final Fantasy VII actually was broken up into 3 episodes as well, and the disc where the discs ended was quite well timed, so ending Midgar and then the second disc and the third disc, so I assume Square's going to follow that. But you would think, and it's been speculated on Reddit and a lot of the forums, that there will be a level cap for each disc, so you'll get as powerful as you can to that point in the game, and then continue on. But they are also talking there will be a lot more side quests and fleshing out things that have already been sort of put down in the lore from the original game. So it's interesting that we have all of this information, but at the same time we have basically nothing. We've got
so little. Yeah.
Yeah, and for me the anticipation is real. I really can't wait to get my teeth sunk into it and get myself a PlayStation 4 or possibly a PS5.
Well,
who knows?
If it's not released in time, that starts to be the question that we need to ask ourselves is, would this first episode be on PS4, but then the future episodes on other platforms as well? And I know that PS5 is likely to have some sometimes I cannot find words. Will still play PS4 games.
Oh, backwards compatibility.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that would be interesting. But what do you guys think in general about episodic games? For me, that was a huge surprise, and I've been anticipating this game remake for a very, very long time. And I have to say that was one of the only things, if out of the release, that made me a little bit disappointed, was the fact that it would just be part of the story. For me, it is not the best part of the story, so a little bit of disappointment in there for me.
It is definitely not the meat of the story. You are right about that, Delphine, but it does set up the rest of it, and obviously maybe Square are going all in on this hand and going, right, well, we've got so much to develop. Now, bear in mind, this is coming on 2 Blu-rays. So the amount of data that they must have in there and voice acting and graphics must be immense. I haven't seen too many first-gen games go over 2 Blu-rays, realistically. No. And this is only episode 1 as well. So how much are they going to cram in there? And I guess it may have been because they bit off more than they could chew and go, we can't do the whole game in one go, but we have to get something out, so let's do it as an episodic game. The more cynical amongst us might say that it's just a simple crash grab to get 40-year-old nerds to buy the same game 3 times. And that could be true as well. I mean, these guys have got to eat, they've got to pay their developers, they've got to pay the light bill as well, and happy days. At least they're not being dicks about it like Electronic Arts would have been, where you wouldn't be able to buy a certain character until you paid for the DLC. But for me, for someone who is a really, really big Final Fantasy fan, and realistically, my love of Japanese RPGs came from this game, and I own a copy of Final Fantasy VII on the PlayStation 1. I own it on the PS3 Virtual Store. I own it on my on my, what do you bloody call the damn thing? You know, the handheld PlayStation.
The Vita?
No, the one before that.
PSP.
Oh, yeah. So I also own it on the PSP. I own it on my iPad. I own it on the Nintendo Virtual Store for my Wii. I have an original copy of the PC release as well, which is part of a pride of place in my collection, and it's worth a lot of money, but good luck getting it running. I own it on Steam also, where all of the bugs have been ironed out, and I have modded the bejesus out of it. So for me, it's not a big deal. I'm just hoping that episode 2 isn't that far into the future that you forget about episode 1. If it was like, the Star Wars, so it came out every Christmas, I'd be really happy with that. Give me, 6 to 12 months to knock over an episode, and I'd be good with that. As long as they kept the quality up. And there would be nothing more disappointing to have an epic first episode and then it turned to shit. And then you just go, there was so much that could have been done here. And for people that have played through the game and know the storyline so well, if they were to fuck it up, it would just be heartbreaking. So let's hope that the episodic format works for this guy. That's all I have to say about that one.
All right, so they have talked about the story and how it would remain close to the original, but adapt to new players and essentially some of the story that was okay in 1997 may not be really PC these days in in 2020 when that comes out. And I'm thinking, of course, of some of the storyline in Dawn's Mansion.
Yes.
Now, what do you think about that?
Well, look, it was a different time, and Japan is Japan, and they are weird, but we love them, and we love them for their weirdness. And for those who don't know, Don's Mansion was an interesting side quest in Final Fantasy VII where you had to infiltrate the mafia Don that owned sort of a section of the slums to get through the quest. And the way you did so was to actually dress up as a girl and flirt with him and then get him into the bedroom and knock him out, sort of thing. So the idea of the quest was, though, you had to go and get the bits to cross-dress. So you had to get a wig, you had to get a dress, you had to get makeup, and there was basically a gay gym as well that you had to go and speak to the guys and do some stuff with. And it was camp as all hell, and it was hilarious. And there was a real big outcry, and they're going to say, Square, please do not take out Don's Mansion because it's part of the storyline, because you've got this super soldier, Cloud Strife, who you play, and he's such a stoic, quiet, a stoic, quiet guy who's haunted by demons, and he's seen way too much, and he's just a killing machine. And then you make him pretty. And just his reaction... And for a character that only had eyes and no mouth back then because the graphics were so poor, the look on his face was priceless when you dress him up, and then when the Don tries to take him to bed. And even when he's in the gym with all the gay guys, because I think he's got to do squats, hasn't he, Delphine?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, so he's got to do all these squats to beat the main guy in the gym to get a piece of the clothing or to get the makeup or something. And it was... For the time, it was funny. It was, there wasn't this whole assume your gender and trans shaming or anything like that. It was just a bit of fun to get him to dress up and sneak into a bad guy's mansion as a girl. Square have said they're going to keep that in. I think their quote was more that they weren't going to change anything, but they were going to flesh things out that were very quickly glossed over, like... There's a kid in Midgar that you find in a pipe, and he's wounded, and you basically get him a potion, and you heal him, and he gives you something which is a quest item, and you never really knew why he was in the pipe, or why he got shot or he got hurt. So I believe their idea is more to build the backstory of those characters rather than to take stuff out. And if you don't like the Don's Mansion, I'm sure it'll be optional, like no Russian level in Call of Duty. So if you don't like it, fuck you, don't play it. It's part of the game. And look, while we're there, I'll quickly touch on Tifa's boobs as well. Look, I'm sure a lot of thirsty nerds out there do want to touch Tifa's boobs. And back in the day, when we didn't have as many polygons as we do now, she was fairly busty, even in the cutscenes. And everyone was worried that her boobs were A, going to be too small, B, going to be too big, or C, going to be too white, because she was a Chinese / Asian / Japanese character, which she never was. And she looks perfect to me. She looks like how I always imagined her, and she looks very close to the character modelling in the movie Advent Children. So
just to touch on that, sorry, are you saying that you've imagined her a lot, or...
Look, I've imagined her a couple of times. The phrase waifu may or may have not come into it, but no, seriously, she is such an integral part of the story. Without Tifa, you don't really have much of a story. I'm not going to ruin the story for anyone that hasn't played it because A, I don't have 3 days to tell it all to you, and B, I haven't played it for a very long time, so I do need to get back into it again. But without Tifa... a lot of Cloud's motivation disappears. So, but look, I think she looks perfect. I think Eris looks fucking amazing. I think they all look amazing. The voice acting is going to be brutal. I wish Barrett would take his shades off, though. That's the only thing I'm not cool with. But other than that, look, it looks amazing. It sounds amazing. Tifa's boobs are fine. Leave them alone. For all the other non-PC stuff, haters gonna hate. Don't buy the game. Simple as that. So Square Enix is doing the right thing. I'm really, really pumped for this remake, and I will be buying a PlayStation 4 or 5. Oh, and by the way, have you seen the fucking limited editions that have come out? Now, the one that you can only buy from Square Enix has got the Hardy Daytona, which is Cloud's bike. Now, this thing is a monster, and the actual model that comes with it is about a foot long. It is fucking huge. Have you seen it?
No.
I've seen some pictures of it. It looked great.
It's amazing. You can take Cloud off the bike, and there's a spot for his sword, but it is literally about the size of a keyboard. It's fucking huge. It's also about $800.
Ouch.
So, you know, then there's another version where you get some skins and you get a steelbook and meh. I actually want the PlayStation console with the Final Fantasy logo in it, and that's what I've been waiting for. Seriously, ask Dan. I've been waiting for this. He bugs me all the time. He says, get a PlayStation so we can play. I'm like, no.
I can understand that. I did not buy a PlayStation 4 until they released the Star Wars edition.
Yeah, exactly right. And I've always said to Dan, no, there'll be a Final Fantasy 7 edition. I want one of them. And he's like, well, buy a cheap, pre-owned one. And I'm like, but then I'll have two. What do I want with two? So it's been a point of contention for ages. But the other issue is it going to be PS4 or PS5? Because people are going to be pissed if they just port the PS4 version to the PS5 for the first episode, where PS5 could do a bit more. But
remember that PS3 to PS4 often had games that were available on both. So Destiny, as an example, you could buy on PS3.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
Activate it on PS4 within a certain amount of time and play it on both consoles. So
sure.
There is always that possibility that they do it that way.
Hopefully.
Are you guys going to be playing it leading up to it? Are you going to try and...
I'm going to replay it, yeah.
It's unlikely that I
Absolutely.
would. It's just too much time. I spent hundreds of hours on that game. We were talking about the music. My mother still comments on the music. She hates it because she would hear it for hours every day.
Hours.
And she still remembers the Midgar music in particular and saying I really hated it. And so I don't think that I would play the whole game, in particular given that this first episode will only be a portion of the game.
Yes.
I think I will happily not remember a whole lot of the stuff that has happened, to be even more surprised than what they are promising. They are promising that players who have played Final Fantasy VII will be surprised by this new game, and I think I'm happy to just wait for it to be there, to be out, and to play it almost as new.
That's actually a really good call, Delphine. To be surprised, it's like playing it for the first time all over again.
Because you can only do it once, so...
Well, I own it on every platform. I mean, it's on my Switch, and who knows, I might. But honestly, I'm actually replaying Final Fantasy 12 at the moment on my Switch, which I purchased. So the Zodiac Age, which is a reimagining of Final Fantasy 12, which I never got into. I didn't like it, but I'm playing through it. And then I've got the remaster for Final Fantasy 10. Final Fantasy 10. That was... That was kind of like, I don't know what you'd call it. That was, like the synthetic heroin to the heroin junkie. It was almost as good and kept you going, but wasn't quite as good as Final Fantasy VII. A lot of people say it's the best Final Fantasy. It's probably the most polished. It's probably the one that everyone remembers the most. But for me, Final Fantasy VII will always be the one that stoked my love of
I'm
that
going
game
to be the same.
genre.
I really enjoyed Final Fantasy X, and I played 10 too as well, and really, really enjoyed the games. I thought the combat system was amazing. I really, really liked that. But for me, Final Fantasy VII will always be the best. Because of course it was the first RPG that I played. And a funny story, I did not buy the game. It was given to me by a friend who recommended that I should be playing it. And I played the game for about 20 minutes and said, nah, that's not my thing. Packed it, gave it back, and he said, you need to play this game. And so I took it back and eventually just absolutely fell in love with the game. It was the best storytelling that I had ever seen in a game. Back then, most games were not a whole lot of storytelling, and I really enjoyed that. So for me, definitely it has to be the best. Maybe because, I'm one of these older people. And if my intro was FF7, you just can't beat it after that, I don't think.
No, not at all. And I mean, the combat system in 10 is refined and it's beautiful, but nothing beats getting a Knights of the Round summon, going up against either the Ruby or the Emerald weapon.
Absolutely.
Getting final attack materia, getting the Phoenix materia, getting the Mime materia, and then equipping everyone with that, and basically letting the weapon hit you once and kill the party, and then bam, you all get revived, and then you fire off 3 Knights of the Round summons, and you can basically put the controller down and walk away, and it takes about 4 hours of you doing nothing, because every time you get killed, the final attack materia is a buff that allows one other materia to fire off when you get killed. So you fire off the Phoenix materia, which revives the whole party, which then fires off the Knights of the Round materia, which is the most strongest summon in the game, where basically summons King Arthur and 12 Knights of the Round Table, which each knight does one of the elemental attacks, so status effect damages for 9999, and then you equip the Mime materia to the other 2 players in your party, which actually allows them to mime the materia of whoever's going first. So it just basically this awesome roundabout of where you get killed, you revive everyone, and then attack with the strongest attack, get killed, revive, attack with the strongest attack. And you just keep going, and the weapons are the strongest characters in the game, and they're stronger than the end boss, and they're these side quests, and it's amazing. And Delphine's giggling in the background because she's done this. But yeah, for me, when you work out how to do that, because back then there was no internet.
No guides. Well, there was a guide, but it was not everybody was able to go online and find out how to do things.
Exactly.
A lot of it you just had to work out for yourself, and that was what was amazing about playing this game, was that you were really getting better at it yourself at the same time that your characters were getting better materia and better weapons and better monsters to call to come and help you. And these scenes, oh my god, every time you'd get a new one, it was like the best thing to see them come in action. Eventually it gets old because they take, 30 seconds each. And you realize that sometimes it's much easier to just, use your sword that eventually also does the 999.
Yes.
Rather than wait your 30 seconds of cutscenes. But just, it was so much fun. And as you say, you wouldn't be able to read everything in a guide and so on. Of course, they did do guides eventually. Back then, your PlayStation magazine and so on, you could buy some special editions that they were doing. But most of it, you just had to learn by yourself. And that was part of the game, I think.
And part of that as well was the storyline went with you learning, so it really sucked you in. Like no game really had other before that, because in the West we didn't really have the role-playing games.
That's
so
right.
We had driving games, shooting games, fighting games. Nothing with a deep story. There were games out there with deep story, but for the majority of people, this was just something that was completely different, going from playing Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter, Gran Turismo, Ridge Racer, Spyro, Medieval, things like that, which were platformers, or games that didn't really have a story to this intricately woven story that took over 80 hours to come out, and by the end of it you're just like, wow. And the closest thing would be if you've ever sat down and watched all 24 episodes of Evangelion at once, and just at the end gone, fuck me. That's pretty much how the story of Final Fantasy VII rolls out. And then there's other bits of Final Fantasy VII. You've got Advent Children, the movie, which takes place after the events of the Final Fantasy VII game. You've got Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core, which is on the PSP, which introduces Zack Fair, which is where Cloud got his sword and a lot of his skill from, which happens before the Final Fantasy VII game. You've then got Dirge of Cerberus, which was on the PlayStation 2, and it sort of went side to the game. It was at the same sort of time before you meet Vincent Valentine, and then there was also Final Fantasy VII Last Orders, which is a short film, and the universe that's built up around this game is just amazing, and Square Enix knew that, and they knew that there was a lot of cashed up man-child and man-women that have played this game back in the day, and that they really needed to do it. But look, not only was Final Fantasy VII teased and sort of brought out at E3, there's some other news. Now, Final Fantasy VIII, Square Enix have advised that they're going to be doing a remaster of that. Now, me and Delphine touched on the Final Fantasy X a minute ago, and it was remastered about 2 years ago, I think. Which basically meant nothing was changed except they changed all the models. They changed it to all high-definition textures and updated the sound and cleaned up the voice acting. And it became a huge hit. I bought it on launch day for the PC. I now own it as well on my Switch. And I play it to death as well. But Final Fantasy VIII's a funny one. It's a very polarizing Final Fantasy game. A lot of people don't like it. A lot of people like it better than Final Fantasy VII. And there are certain things about Final Fantasy VIII that really were completely different to Final Fantasy VII. Now, have either of you guys gotten into Final Fantasy VIII?
I did play it, but I got sucked in a card game. And I believe that I spent most of that game playing cards.
It had a great trading card and card battling mechanic, which a lot of people remember. It was also very graphically different as well from the original Final Fantasy VII. Whereas Final Fantasy VII came out... where was I? Oh, it was very different graphically to the original Final Fantasy VII. Final Fantasy VII came out early in the PlayStation's life, so a lot of the tricks and tweaks were still being discovered. So the graphics were blocky, the pre-rendered cutscenes obviously were beautiful, and the pre-rendered backgrounds looked great. But Final Fantasy VIII brought bigger, more human-looking sprites and character models. The battling was very similar with a different kind of system though, whereas in Final Fantasy VII you had materia for your magic. In Final Fantasy VIII you had to draw magic from the earth, and you'd find points where you could draw spells out of the earth, and you could also draw spells out of enemies or other players, and you'd have a stock. So you might find a well that had 10 fire spells, and you'd pull 10 fires out of that, and then you had 10 fires to use, but once they were gone, they were gone. Whereas in Final Fantasy VII, you had the fire materia, and as long as you had magic points, you could just keep pummeling with that. It also looked much more like a second-gen game. It wasn't as blocky, as I said. Triple Triad, the card game, sucked everyone in, and the storyline was pretty cool. It was Squall and Renoir or whatever her name was, who looked like Tifa but wasn't Tifa, of course. But the main thing about Final Fantasy VIII was they had gun blades. Fucking swords that had a gun in them. Like, how cool was that? And, you could chop someone up and then you could hold your sword out and shoot them. Gun blades were fucking awesome. And Squall was the typical moody teenager protagonist. They didn't change much from Final Fantasy VII with the whole moody protagonist. It was a lot darker in my view as well. I don't think the story was anywhere near as strong. But I didn't mind it. I bought the re-release because all of these games have been re-released in their original form but never updated or remastered. So this is another nod to the fans. So there will be nothing new about this one. There's no extra special voice acting or anything like that, I don't believe. So it'll just be a high-def remake of Final Fantasy VIII, which, of course, I'll buy. I
will too.
Yeah, I have a copy of every Final Fantasy game except for my online Final Fantasy account has lapsed. I haven't gone back because that's a sink of time that I'm not willing to get sucked into as much as I love Final Fantasy. Also, I haven't bought Elder Scrolls Online either. that's super dangerous, so I won't be doing that.
I can attest to that. Don't do it.
But yeah, I'm excited. I'm really happy that Square Enix are going to do this for the gamers. I hope that they do it for the gamers and not for the lulz or not for the coin. I think it's going to be huge. I honestly can't wait till next year and to get episode 1 or to get an announcement that episode 1 isn't ready and hopefully another trailer. But now, as a bit of a, what did I call you before we started recording, Dan? A Final Fantasy casual. As a bit of a casual, does any of this excite you? Are you gonna jump on the train when it comes around and get Final Fantasy VII Remake and get stuck in?
I mean, that's a hard one. Look, I liked 7, I really did, and I've liked others in the series, 13, 15, etc. But episodic makes me hold off. I think I'll just wait and see if I'm being realistic about it. I will play it. There's no doubt that I will play it at some point. It's just a question of when's the right time.
Well, that's a good point. Like, do you wait and get all 3 episodes at once so you can just bang through them? Do you get each episode the second it's released, bang through it, and then, wait for the next hit in 6 months' time? Like, Square Enix are really good at giving you a whole lot of information with no fucking information whatsoever. They did it with Kingdom Hearts 3. That turned out to be shit hot, so that's fine with me, but I want to know how far apart are the episodes going to be. Am I going to have to buy a PlayStation 4 and 5, or can I hold off and get the PlayStation 5 special edition with all 3 discs? Because I'm a bit of a completeness nerd. I really don't want to buy a PS4 for episode 1 and a PS5 for episode 2 and 3, and then have a PS4 and disc and then 2 PS5 discs on my shelf. I think that's going to look fucking terrible. So Square Enix, if you're listening, I want them all on one platform. Preferably PS5.
Yeah, episodic is going to be really interesting. And to see how you feel as well after finishing what is only part of the story. Because for me, they still need to make it in a way that closes off the story well enough that you're not frustrated that the game has ended and that you have to wait. So it's important that they do that well in terms of storytelling, but then as you said, that you also have some type of deadline as to when is the next episode coming out. For me, as much as I'm excited about playing it, it's very unlikely that I will buy it at the time it's released. I'm always playing games years after they're released. There are very, very few games that I play immediately. Often I wait at least a couple of months for the game to be a little bit cheaper anyways.
Look, at this stage, I'm just going to put it out there that we may have an unboxing on the 20th of March of the Hardy Daytona. At this point, possibly. Because I'm still deciding whether I'm going to buy the bad boy or not.
Will you take leave for it?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
One day?
I've waited for this for 20 years, dude. Probably a week. I'll take a week and I'll get it on launch day and I'll finish it in that week. I won't eat. I won't sleep.
Isn't that pretty normal for you?
Yeah, pretty normal. I'll probably have to drag a television into the spare room and the PlayStation and just, basically stick it in the main vein because my wife will leave me if she has to watch me play Final Fantasy VII for a week solid, even though she loves the game herself. And we actually have 2 copies of Final Fantasy VII. One is hers and one is mine in our games library, so that's really awesome. But yeah, this is the game I will take leave for. A lot of other people took leave for Fallout 3 or Red Dead Redemption 2. Meh, filthy casuals. I'm taking a week's leave for Final Fantasy VII Remake, and I don't feel bad about it at all. But look,
are you going to deck yourself out? Like get the shirts, get the pillowcases?
Oh yeah.
Covers?
I'm going to get the the body pillow with Tifa on it.
I didn't want to go there,
wig.
but...
No, look, I've got a shitload of Final Fantasy VII merch lying around. Realistically, if I'm spending money on looking like it and getting body pillows and, you know, all that other weird stuff, there's less money for me to buy the bike. So, I don't know. Look, I'm not really overly joyed with the episodic content because there is a certain scene at the end of Disc 1 which gives you the motivation and the anger to keep playing the game. And it's one of the most iconic scenes in gaming. And I don't want to go through that again.
Yeah. No one does.
Okay. I don't want to go through that again only to wait a year before I get to face off with the guy that did it. You know what I mean? And that sounds really dumb, but I don't think it is. Like, in the original game, shit went down. You went, what the fuck? Are you kidding me? Shed a tear or two because I know most people were never expecting that and just went, fuck me, put disc 2 in and just head down, got the grinding on and then went and faced him again and went, what the fuck?
That's right.
I don't want that to be lost. And that was a big part of the story. I don't want that to be lost.
It absolutely is. And that's where I think they need to really think about the storytelling and how they would end episode 1 because...
Yeah.
That, like, they can't do the same as what they have done from one disc to the next because you can't let people hang that way, I don't think.
No, it's unfair and wrong.
Mind you, movies have done it.
Yeah, but gamers are a lot different, aren't they? It's more tactile. You've got a say in it. I'm really pissed that Netflix cancelled Santa Clarita Diet on that cliffhanger. But I can deal with that. If it came back in a couple of years, I'd watch it. I don't know if I could deal with that whole break if they do it the same as the original. So they've got to be smart about it, whether that's hinted at the end of the first disc and then the second disc starts with that, I think would be a better way to do it. You can't do that and then move to the second disc unless that second disc was only 3 or so months away.
I agree.
And we know Square Enix isn't going to be 3 or so months away.
No, I don't think it's feasible. And as you say, you know, my expectation is that we are talking about 12 months between these releases, maybe a little bit more, but if it starts to be years, you know, like they can't take 10 years to release, you know, all the episodes of that particular series. It's just...
No.
So there comes a point where I think they really need to think how they're going to be doing that. And whether by the time this is released, we will in fact know when the next opus is coming out.
Yeah, and how many episodes there's going to be. We haven't even been told that.
That's right.
We're only basing it on, there was 3 discs in the original game. They're saying that the first disc is basically the first re-release. So we're going, well, episode 2 will be the second disc, episode 3 will be the third disc.
That's right.
We don't know.
We have no idea.
It
could be only 2. It could be 10 for all we know.
Well, it could be like Telltale where they only release, you know, like an hour or two's content. So it could be 10 episodes, but each episode could only go for, you know, 10 hours or something, and it's like a side quest. I think that would kill the mood as well. And then if that was the case, I'd probably stop playing and wait for him to finish it, then go back and go from beginning to end.
That's right. But then, you know, the issue with that as well is that if people wait and don't buy the games when they come out, there's always a risk that the end never comes and is never released. So it's really a catch-22 with the episodic release because... As you said, there's probably a whole lot of reasons behind it in terms of storytelling, and they are saying this is a complete game. This is not, you know, just we're doing that. I think they're trying to explain that they're not doing it just for money, essentially. But, you know, you do feel very much captive as a gamer, knowing that you're going to be stuck having to probably get into the other games as well, and that if you don't, then there is the risk that something doesn't come back, as you say, with a lot of series and so on, that, you know, you get into it and then not everybody did and bang, that's gone.
Yeah. I don't think that there's going to be any danger that they don't make their money back on this, but we're just going to have to wait and see. So I guess that will be a subject for another podcast, or, as I said, an unboxing of an $800 useless piece of plastic.
I'm looking forward to that already.
Yeah, my wife isn't. Neither is my bank account. But yeah, I think that's pretty much all I have to say on that. You can send me a PayPal tip to buy the bike as well if anyone would like to.
Anyway, any last thoughts, guys?
Please give us some chocobos even in the first discs.
Chocobos. And look, my only thoughts is it's one of those dreams that's come true, a childhood dream. Is that please don't fuck it up, Square Enix, okay? That's all I've got to say. But otherwise, I can't wait. It's gonna be epic. And buy it, pre-order it, do what you need to do to get this game.
Too easy. All right, well, we'll wrap it up there. Thanks, everyone, for listening to this episode. As always, you'll find us on, I think the easiest way these days is either jump on Facebook or Reddit. All the links are on there. So jump on there, leave us a comment. I'm sure you'll find us reviewing this once it comes out, or at the very least, making Aaron review it for us. So keep an eye out for it. But thanks, everyone, for listening, and thank you, Aaron and Delphine.
Thanks.
Thank you.
You have been listening to the S.O.A.P podcast. Join us again soon for another episode, and don't forget to hit us up on all the social media platforms because we love hearing from you.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.